Mark the positions of the oar slots in pencil, ensuring that they are evenly spaced. Note that the spacing is not the same as that of the internal ribs. Use a strip of masking tape to indicate the depth of the slots in the hull. Now cut the slots using a thin, flat needle file. Once you've done one side, repeat for the other side. Take the small part 19 which was supplied with stage 6. Try and position first and gently sand it to the curve of the bows. Once this is test fitted, glue this into position. Clean up any parts of the anchor as shown and test fit the parts together before applying any glue. Apply a small amount of superglue. Now gently reattach the parts in position and then allow the glue to dry. Take one of the 1x3mm wood strips that were supplied from the previous stage and cut these to length. Refer to the picture on page 39 of the instructions for where the mast hole will be. The next 2 rows of boards on each side have to be cut to a pointed angle, then trimmed to length. Glue the outer boards in place. The last 2 boards are thin strips. Cut these to fit the remaining space. Refer to the picture on page 40 for the positioning of the thwarts. Press the strips into the hull so that they take up the curve, then mark and cut to the length needed. Apply glue to the insides of the ribs at the points where the supports touch them. Press each strip into place, ensuring that it is in line with the edge of the hull and both ends are supported by the ribs. Now lightly clamp the thwart supports in position until the glue is dry, using spring clamps or clothes pegs. Mark a piece of thin cardstock with the exact size of the 2 metal parts. This will be used as a pattern. Now cut the cardstock to shape. It doesn't matter if it isn't exactly the same size as the metal, as this will be trimmed down. When you are happy with the fit, sparingly apply a couple of spots of glue at the points where the duck boards meet the hull, including their edges, and press them into place. The thwarts are made from the 5 strips of 1.5 by 3mm wood that were supplied with stage 9. These are 100mm long, so they'll need to be cut to length. Referring to the picture on page 42 of the instructions, position each of the thwarts in turn and mark what length it needs to be. Remember that it sits inside the hull, supported by the 2 long strips that you added last time. Cut each of the thwarts to the correct length. Although you'll have some spare wood, it is best to cut it over length and trim it to fit. The first and fifth from the left need to have cutouts from the mast, so mark the positions of these. Now use a round needle file to form a semicircular cutout, measuring approximately 4 mm across in each of the thwarts. Apply a small amount of glue on each end and glue the thwart into position. With all the thwarts fitted, start constructing the windlass, which is made from a thicker piece of wood. Take the 3x3mm wood supplied with stage 9. You will also need some surplus planking material. Glue this down into position as shown, trimming off any areas needed. Refer to the diagram on page 45 of the instructions for the dimensions of the windlass and details of carving the windlass and adding the short lengths of wire. Take the remaining 1.5 by 3mm wood supplied with stage 9 and mark 2 lengths to fit between the stern transom and the rear thwart. Cut both pieces to size after double checking the length. Note that the ends need to be angled slightly as they don't meet the transom and thwart at the right angles. Apply a little glue to both ends of the 2 braces. Fit the 2 braces in place and hold them until the glue dries. Take the 1.5 by 1.5mm wood supplied with stage 9 and mark 2 lengths to fit between the stern transom and the middle of the rear thwart. Note that these angle upwards slightly. Cut the wood to the marked lengths, angling the ends so that they will fit snugly in place. Paint them white if you choose to paint the painted option, then glue them at both ends and fit them in place, leaving 6mm between each of them. Glue the 2 L-shaped braces, which are parts 22, which were supplied with stage 6, inside the stern above the 2 side braces. If you opted for a painted finish, paint them yellow ochre first. Attaching the eye bolt. With the launch nearing completion, you can add the eye bolt used to attach the mooring line, then make the rudder. Drill a hole inside the end of the keel just above the bow brace, using a bit the same size as the eye bolt, which is roughly 0.5mm or a number 74 drill. Apply a drop of superglue to the eye bolt and carefully insert it into the hole with the eye pointing up and down. Making the rudder. The rudder is part 21, the last of the plywood pieces you received with stage 6. You also need the brass strip, brass wire and the 1.5 by 1.5mm wooden strip. Mark and cut a 30mm length of the wooden strip. Use a 1mm number 61 drill bit and drill a hole into the edge of the plywood, just below the tip of the thinnest point of the rudder. You'll need to drill right through as shown in the instructions. Fold a small piece of sandpaper with the abrasive on the inside and draw the tip of the strip of wood you cut through it to produce a slight rounded taper. Try this in the hole until you can just push it through as shown in the instructions on page 48, but with a slight protrusion. Take it out again and put it to one side, but do not glue it at this stage. Take the brass strip and use a needle nose pliers to form a 2mm bend, about 5mm from one end. Now fit the strip over the rudder at the top of the lower notch as shown and cut the ends flush with the edge of the rudder. Bend another piece of brass strip so that it fits over the top notch as shown in the instructions on page 50, and when you're happy, glue both into position. Hold the rudder against the stern of the launch so that it lines up with the keel, and mark just below the two brass strips. Using a drill the same size as your brass wire, drill a shallow hole in the keel at the marked points. Drill another hole in the transom. This will go right through the wood. Cut two 4mm lengths of brass wire and bend them in the middle so that they make an L shape. Put a drop of superglue on one end of the L and insert it into the lower hole, leaving the other arm projecting slightly facing up. Repeat for the other hole so you have two projecting pins or rudder pinlets. Now glue the end of the tiller and insert it into the hole at the top of the rudder. For the painted option, paint the entire rudder white, including the tiller and the two brass gudgeons. You can fit the rudder in place by hooking the brass strips or the gudgeons over the pinlets. However, the rudder is best displayed, unshipped and stowed inside the launch. The launch is nearly complete and all that is left to do is to finish off a few fittings. Gently clean any surplus moulding flash from the oars using fine abrasive paper. If you're going to be painting the oars, paint the whole oar with white metal primer. When it's dry, paint the shaft white and the blade yellow ochre. Paint all 4 oars the same way. You will receive the remaining oars to finish equipping the launch later in the series. Coiling the anchor rope. The anchor rope is made from the twine supplied with stage 9. Cut a square of masking tape and start to form a neat coil on it, working out from the centre. Continue until the coil is around 17 mm in diameter. Lightly brush on some glue covering the whole coil and avoid letting the glue soak straight through. Allow the glue to thoroughly dry and go clear, then peel off the masking tape to reveal a neat coil of rope. The mast is made from the 3 mm wooden rod supplied. Gently pull the rod through a piece of folded sandpaper, rotating it slowly so that you taper it starting from a point about 17 mm from one end. Aim to produce a smooth, even taper coming down to a diameter of around 1.5 mm at the thinnest point. Round off the end and then cut at a length of 90 mm.